The New York Islanders' next move has just been revealed, and what is going to be a very busy offseason for the New York Islanders. One of the biggest questions the team has to address is what to do with current free agent forward Kyle Palmieri. Now, recently, the Carolina Hurricanes signed a contract that sheds a lot of light into what Kyle Palmieri's next contract with the Islanders will look like. We're going to break that down on this episode of Islanders Digest and also talk about whether or not it even makes sense for the Islanders to bring back Kyle Palmieri. But before we do that, I do want to thank all 75 of you who are subscribed to the channel. Your support means so much as we build up this channel. If you haven't subscribed already, well, what are you waiting for? Now let's get right into talking about what Kyle Palmieri's next contract with the Islanders could look like and hopefully will look like. Taylor Hall just signed a 3-year extension with the Hurricanes for roughly $3.17 million, according to Stefan Rosner, and this would be the ideal contract for the Islanders to give Kyle Palmieri. Taylor Hall, as we all know, was once a dominant player in the NHL, went first overall. A lot of Islander fans wanted to trade for him back in the day. Travis Hamonic for Taylor Hall was the rumored trade that never happens. He ended up getting traded for Adam Larson in one of the trades of all time in the NHL. It's really the only way you could put it. However, Taylor Hall at this point in his career is much more similar to Kyle Palmieri as a player, and if the Islanders can get Kyle Palmieri for $3.17 million, it'll be a really solid deal. Let's talk a little bit more about the current contract situation with the Islanders and Kyle Palmieri because it is pretty interesting. We know Lou Lamoriello was interested in re-signing Kyle Palmieri. It was one of his focuses. He tried to bring him back at the deadline, signing him right there. Didn't get a contract done. We know he didn't trade Kyle Palmieri at the deadline. I know a lot of fans wanted a second-round pick for Kyle Palmieri. I honestly think that would have been the right move, but you know what? It's over. Lou is done. There's nothing you can do about it. You got to forget about the second round pick and really focus on whether or not it makes sense for the Islanders to bring this player back for another few seasons. Now, Kyle Palmieri has been consistent for the New York Islanders, but without Brock Nelson in the lineup, he has slowed down. In the past 21 games, when Brock Nelson has not played for the Islanders, as mentioned in this article by Stefan Rosner, Kyle Palmieri only has 4 goals and 3 assists. Definitely not numbers you want to see from a player in the top 6. And granted, Kyle Palmieri is getting older. You really can't expect him to stay in the top 6 as he's turning 35. However, if you're signing him for a contract worth $3.17 million, well, then he doesn't need to be a top 6 forward, which is why I think if the Islanders can bring back Kyle Palmieri, 3.15 would be a great deal for them to sign. His last deal with the Islanders was worth $5 million over the last 4 years. Taylor Hall's deal, I believe, was $6 million. Of course, Taylor Hall signed that deal when he was a more effective player. And as we're going to talk about when we compare these two players and why I think signing them to a similar amount of value makes a lot of sense for the New York Islanders, Taylor Hall's career has just been decimated by injuries in recent seasons. We don't know, actually, what's going on with the Islanders and Kyle Palmieri. We know Lou Lamoriello wants to sign him for a deal under what he currently has. Some people have speculated maybe he signed him under the table. I don't think that happened. I don't think the new GM is going to come into a situation where Kyle Palmieri has already signed. And being that a new GM is coming in, especially now that he can see this contract that Taylor Hall signed in Carolina, whatever Lou Lamoriello talks about with Kyle Palmieri really does not matter anymore. The new GM can, assuming Lou Lamoriello did not secretly sign a contract, which he's done before, but I don't think he's done in this case. At least I hope he hasn't done in this case. New GM can sit down Kyle Palmieri, and if he wants to stay in New York, which it seems like he does, they can work out a new deal. Now let's really talk about Kyle Palmieri. In the recent seasons for the New York Islanders, he has been one of their most consistent forwards, and that is definitely one of the main reasons you want to keep him. I mean, 2 seasons ago, he put up 30 goals. His career year happening so late. You don't often see players have career years when they're 33, 32 in that season, I guess. Happened to Kyle Palmieri, and he had another really solid season this year, putting up 24 goals, 24 assists to have 48 points. The year before, he had 54 points. And these numbers have been really good for Kyle Palmieri. The concerning part is more in the previous few seasons, he's had a lot of injuries. 3 seasons ago, he played 55 games. The year before that, 69 games. The year before that, a couple of years ago, he had 65 games, 74, 62. It's a player who misses a decent amount of time every single season. And that gets a little concerning when it comes to signing a player who is older, a player who already has more miles on them. Kyle Palmieri has been in the NHL for a long time. However, it's also the case with Taylor Hall, which we're going to talk about now, signing that $3.16 million contract. Taylor Hall this season has been really strong for the Carolina Hurricanes. In 31 games, he's put up 18 points, 9 goals, 9 assists. However, in previous seasons, Taylor Hall's career has just been decimated by injuries. I mean, 2 years ago, in Chicago. Last year played only 10 games before getting hurt, out for the season. Brutal. It's just been like that for Taylor Hall. When he is healthy at this point, he is putting up numbers similar to Kyle Palmieri, and I hope he stays healthy. But this just shows this is a good range for a contract for the Islanders to sign. You get good value at $3.16 million if that is where the Islanders sign Kyle Palmieri for. Now, considering Kyle Palmieri has played 82 games the last 2 seasons, you likely would see him get a little bit more. Perhaps the Islanders could get him to take 1 year less for $4 million for 2 seasons. And if the Islanders do that, I think it would be a really solid contract and would also really help the Islanders long term. Now, I know you're probably questioning why I think signing a 34-year-old to a couple more seasons would make sense for the Islanders long term, and I'm going to explain it now, right here. I think there is a lot of value to bring Kyle Palmieri back, and that's because the Islanders have a couple contracts they can move. Now, I know a lot of people would have liked to trade Kyle Palmieri at the deadline. That's over. You cannot get a second-round pick for Kyle Palmieri. Now, it's done. The only way to get value for Kyle Palmieri is to keep him on your team. You're probably going to have to give him a no-trade clause or some sort of assurance that he's not going to want to move, because like the whole point, he's going to sign a team-friendly deal with the Islanders, as he wants to stay with the Islanders. He doesn't want to stay with them for the season and then get moved. And you might be hesitant with that, but the reason I think this makes so much sense is looking at the Islanders roster, there are a couple of players that are likely going to want to move this offseason to get younger. And you really question if the Islanders move all these players if they don't have at least somebody to play in the top 6 with Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat. Now, with Taylor Hall getting signed by Carolina, and this is only going to continue as the offseason goes on, more and more teams in the playoffs and outside the playoffs are going to re-sign guys so they don't hit the market. I mean, the market for depth forwards was already questionable as it was. Without Taylor Hall, that is another blow to that market. There are not going to be that many players available. So if you move players like Anders Lee and John Gabriel Pageau, the Islanders are going to want to have players replace them. And frankly, in the Islanders system, there just are not enough players ready to step up to the NHL next season. They do have a lot of encouraging players that we're going to be talking about soon, but in terms of next season, they don't really have that many people. So if the Islanders are going to move Anders Lee and Pageau for likely second-round picks or even a little more, which is what I think they should do, they're going to need to have somebody stay in the lineup. And that's why it makes so much sense for them to bring back Kyle Palmieri, especially if they can get him at a team-friendly deal around 3.5, that range for 2 or 3 seasons. I think this makes a lot of sense for the Islanders, and it can be really beneficial in making it easier to move some of these players. But I'd love to know your thoughts when it comes to Kyle Palmieri. I know a lot of fan opinions were very divided, especially when Kyle Palmieri was not traded at the deadline. Look, that's over. We can bash Lou and the mistakes he made with the Islanders all we want. He's no longer the GM. This is going to be the next GM of the Islanders' choice to make. And I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments, whether or not you want to see the next GM of the New York Islanders bring back Kyle Palmieri. And if you do, I'd love to know what you think that contract should look like. Do you think it should be a 3-year, $3 million type contract? Or are you willing to give him up to maybe $4.5 million or even $5 million like he had on his last contract? I'd love to know your thoughts below in the comments. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. This is Islanders Digest. Let's go Islanders.